A missing $180 every month exposed the one promise my husband never kept. 2 years and 4 months ago, my husband Callum's younger brother Ronan wanted to start a landscaping business. His own crew, his own equipment, mostly seasonal contracts with a couple of homeowners associations and a nursing home chain that needed their grounds kept up year-round. He needed a loan for a used truck, a trailer, and enough commercial mowing and edging equipment to actually bid jobs competitively, somewhere around $14,500 all in. The credit union wanted a cosigner before they'd approve it, because Ronan was 26 at the time, had been laid off twice in 3 years from 2 different landscaping crews he'd worked for, and had exactly 1 year of steady pay stubs to show them from his most recent job, which wasn't enough history on its own. Callum wanted to cosign. I didn't want him to, and I said so more than once. I remember the exact conversation where it came up seriously. We were at our kitchen table on a Tuesday evening. I had a stack of report cards spread out because it was the end of a grading period and I teach 3rd grade, and Callum brought over his laptop with the loan paperwork already pulled up, like he'd been expecting me to say yes fairly quickly. I told him that co-signing a loan doesn't mean you're vouching for your brother's character. It means you're legally agreeing to pay the entire remaining balance yourself if he can't. Full stop. No matter how good either of your intentions are going in. I asked him what would happen to us if the business failed in year 1 and the credit union came after the cosigner for the whole $14,500 at once. He said Ronan wasn't going to let him down. I said that wasn't really the point I was making, and I remember his jaw doing the thing it does when he's decided the conversation is over but doesn't want to say that out loud. We didn't fight about it in the dramatic sense. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody slept on the couch. But I remember going to bed that night still annoyed, turning it over while he read next to me like nothing had happened, and I remember him signing the paperwork 9 days later without bringing it up to me again first, mentioning it afterward almost in passing, the way you'd mention you'd finally taken the car in for its oil change. I let it go mostly because by the time I found out it was signed, it felt like a decided thing rather than an open one, and pushing further would have meant relitigating something that was already done. And for the first year, as far as I knew, it wasn't costing us anything at all. Ronan made his payments on time, or at least Callum never said otherwise. Callum mentioned once, that first spring, standing at the stove making eggs on a Saturday, that the business was figuring itself out, in the same easy tone he uses to tell me traffic wasn't bad, and I took it at face value, the way you take most of what your husband tells you at face value when there's no specific reason yet not to. This past March, we started the process to refinance our mortgage. Rates had dropped enough that our loan officer said it was worth running the numbers, and the credit union handling the refinance wanted 24 consecutive months of statements from our joint checking account, standard documentation for underwriting, the same as they'd want from anyone. I was the one who volunteered to pull it all together, because I'm better at that kind of paperwork than Callum is, and it genuinely doesn't bother me, and I sat down on a Sunday afternoon in early March with my laptop and started downloading 2 years of statements 1 month at a time while he took our son to a birthday party across town. I wasn't looking for anything. I want to be clear about that because it matters. I wasn't auditing him. I wasn't suspicious of anything. I was doing the most boring possible task, renaming PDFs into a folder by month so the loan officer wouldn't have to ask me to resend anything. But you can't scroll through 24 months of your own bank statements without your eyes eventually catching a pattern, especially once you've looked at the same layout enough times in a row that anything repeating starts to stand out the way a wrong note stands out in a song you know. And there was one, a transfer of exactly $180, going out on the 3rd of every single month, to an account identified only by a partial routing number and a short memo line that read, Ronan Loan. Every month. I checked June, I checked November, I checked a random one from the previous January. Same amount. Same day. Same 4 words. I did the math sitting right there at the kitchen table. The same table from that conversation 2 years earlier, the report cards long since turned in, replaced now by a laptop and a stack of downloaded statements. 24 months, $180 each, came to $4,320 that had left our joint account over 2 years. Money I had touched every single week doing our grocery budget, paying our son's daycare, covering our own bills when things were tight in the fall, and I had never once noticed it. Because I don't usually scroll that far back in an account, I mostly check for a current balance rather than a full history, and because Callum handles the bill pay screen more often than I do, out of nothing more sinister than habit and the fact that he's usually the one home first to catch things before they're overdue. I sat there for a while before I did anything with what I'd found. I remember closing the laptop at one point, getting up, starting to make dinner, and then coming back to it 20 minutes later because I couldn't actually stop thinking about it long enough to focus on chopping an onion. I asked him about it that night, after our son was asleep and the dishwasher was running, and I tried to ask it plainly rather than as an ambush, though I don't know now that it landed that way for him. I put my laptop on the table, opened to the transfer history, turned it around to face him, and asked what Ronan loan meant. He looked at the screen for a few seconds before he said anything, long enough that I watched him do the math himself, 24 months at a glance, and I could see something settle in his face, the specific look of someone realizing a thing they'd been managing privately for a long time had just stopped being private. He didn't deny it. I'll say that for him. There was no version of the conversation where he tried to tell me it was something else, no story about a subscription or a mistaken transfer. He said the actual loan payment on Ronan's equipment financing was $310 a month, that Ronan had been covering $130 of it on his own from the start, and that Callum had been quietly making up the remaining $180 out of our account since the second month of the loan, when Ronan first fell behind and Callum, as the cosigner, got a late notice directly from the credit union before Ronan had even told him there was a problem. "You got a notice," I said. 2 years ago. "And you didn't tell me then either." He said no. He said he'd made the first payment himself that month out of what he told himself was a one-time thing, to keep it from showing up as a missed payment on his own credit, and then the next month Ronan was short again, and it just kept being the choice that was easier than the other choice, until 18 more months had gone by and it wasn't a one-time thing anymore, it was just how the account worked now, quietly, underneath everything else we were doing with that money. I asked him why he never told me, not once, not even after the first few months when it would have been a much smaller number and a much smaller conversation. He said, almost immediately, that he didn't want to have the fight again, the same fight from the kitchen table 2 years earlier, where I'd have been right, and he knew I'd have been right, and he said watching me be right about it out loud felt worse to him than just handling it quietly on his own. He said it started as something he told himself would only last a season or two, until Ronan's contracts picked up in the spring, and then a season or two became 4 seasons, and by the time it had gone on a full year, telling me felt like it would require explaining not just the money but the entire year of not mentioning it, which felt to him like a bigger conversation than the $180 itself had ever been. I didn't yell. I want to be honest that I wanted to, a little, sitting there doing the math again in my head. Daycare payments we'd stretched some months, a used car we'd put off buying for longer than we needed to, but what I mostly felt was something closer to being tired. The specific tiredness of realizing a decision had been made for both of us, out of both of our money, over and over, 24 separate times, without it ever once being a decision I was actually in the room for. He said he was sorry, more than once, in a way that felt genuine rather than performed. I told him I needed a few days before I wanted to talk about it further, which is not a thing either of us is naturally good at. We're both instant processors by temperament. We usually talk things out the same evening they happen, but I meant it this time, and to his credit, he didn't push, didn't text me the next morning trying to reopen it before I was ready. 3 days went by where we were polite to each other in the specific, careful way people are polite when something is sitting unaddressed in the room with them. We talked again the following weekend, sitting outside on the back steps while our son napped, and this time he told me more of it, mostly unprompted, which I think mattered to me more than the apology had. His father had run a small auto repair shop when Callum and Ronan were kids, out of a converted garage bay with 2 lifts, and it had struggled for years in ways nobody in the family discussed openly. Callum remembered his mother quietly picking up a second part-time job at a grocery store the same year he started middle school, remembered a car in their driveway getting repossessed one morning while he was getting ready for school and nobody explaining it to him until years later, remembered his father never once, in nearly 20 years of running that shop, saying out loud to either of his sons that the business was in real trouble. Right up until the week it finally closed for good, when Callum was 17. He said he'd promised himself, somewhere in there as a teenager, that if he was ever in a position to stop a family member's small business from failing quietly like that, humiliatingly, without anyone saying anything until it was already over, he would do it, without turning it into a whole public thing that anybody had to feel ashamed of in front of the rest of the family. Which explained the instinct I told him sitting next to him on the step, and I meant that. I wasn't trying to be cutting about it. But it didn't explain the specific choice to spend 2 full years not telling his own wife where $4,320 of our shared money had gone, $180 at a time. He agreed with that distinction. He didn't really have a defense for that part, and to his credit, he didn't try to build one out of the first part of the story. He just said he understood the difference between protecting Ronan from shame and protecting himself from an argument he didn't want to lose twice, and that somewhere in the second year, quietly, he'd stopped being entirely sure which one he was actually doing anymore. Ronan's loan still has about 14 months left on it as of this recording, assuming the payments stay level, which Callum says they're currently on track to. Ronan doesn't know that I know, as far as either of us is aware. Callum hasn't told him, and I haven't brought it up with Ronan directly either, mostly because I'm still deciding what I even think it would accomplish to do that, and partly because some part of this still doesn't feel like it's mine to raise with him first. We opened a separate account that April, not to hide money from each other, we were both clear about that going in, but so that any payment either of us makes to a family member over $100 gets flagged by both of us seeing it happen in real time, a rule we came up with sitting at that same kitchen table, half serious at first about writing it down and taping it to the fridge like a chore chart, which we ultimately didn't do, though I did save the text where he first suggested it, mostly, I think, because I wanted proof it had been his idea and not something I'd had to extract from him. The $180 still leaves our account on the 3rd of every month. I still see it now, because I check now, in a way I didn't used to. Nothing about the actual arrangement with Ronan has changed. Callum is still covering the gap. The business is still not quite profitable enough to close it on its own, and I haven't asked him to stop, partly because stopping now, with 14 months left on the loan, would put the whole cosigned balance at real risk of default, which would hurt Callum's credit as much as it would hurt Ronan's, and neither of us wants that outcome badly enough to force it. What's changed is smaller than that, and harder to point to. I get a text on the 3rd of the month now, every month, that just says, "Sent it," nothing more, which he started doing on his own the week after our second conversation, without me ever asking him to. I don't know if 14 more months of that text is going to feel like enough by the time the loan's actually paid off. Some months it does. Some months, checking the account and seeing the $180 leave right on schedule, it just makes me think about the 23 times before it that I never saw at all. I haven't decided which of those two feelings is the more accurate one yet, and I'm not sure 14 months is going to be enough time to decide.